The galaxy, vast and ancient, had long been a playground for the Galactic Concord, a coalition of powerful species that had mastered the art of diplomacy, conquest, and survival. For centuries, they had thrived in a state of fragile peace, each race more advanced than the last. Their alliances were strong, their technologies beyond human comprehension, and their histories long enough to make even the oldest stars seem young. The Concord's reach spanned hundreds of worlds, from the glittering cities of the Enorians to the organic jungles of the Zephyrians. But there was one question that even the Concord couldn't answer. What happened to humanity? Once, millennia ago, humans had been a fierce and proud species, their cities bright beacons of innovation, and their warships feared across the galaxy. They had forged alliances and waged wars with the Concord, sometimes allies, sometimes adversaries, but always a force to be reckoned with. Yet, at some point, humanity's star began to fade. A great war, known only as the Silence, had swept through human-controlled territories. A conflict that had led to the fall of entire colonies and the disappearance of humanity's military might. When the dust settled, Earth's once booming empire was reduced to an isolated planet, its influence no longer felt among the stars. Over time, other species stopped sending messages, stopped recognizing humanity's existence. Humanity, it seemed, had vanished into the void. But even in the darkest corners of space, whispers of humans endured. Tales passed from one race to the next, spoken in hushed tones. Some said that Earth had been destroyed in a cataclysmic event. Others whispered that humans had retreated, content with their quiet solitude. And yet, despite the centuries of silence, the Council had never truly let go of the idea that humanity was more than just a forgotten legend. It was during the darkest hour of the Galactic Concord's history that the Council, plagued by fear of the encroaching Xinthar, made a decision that had been unthinkable for eons. The Xinthar, a brutal and savage species, had begun their campaign of destruction, invading system after system, leaving nothing but death and ruin in their wake. With no other options left, the Council activated the ancient beacons, a network of long-dormant communication relays that stretched across the galaxy. And for the first time in centuries, the Council sent a message, its destination, Earth. "We need you," the message echoed, faint but clear, across the darkness of space. "We don't know if you are still out there, but the Xinthar are coming. Please answer the call." The galaxy held its breath, waiting. Would humanity respond, or had they, too, become nothing more than a myth? An unexpected signal. The galaxy held its collective breath. The distress signal from the Galactic Concord had been sent, a beacon of desperate hope through the endless dark. It was the first real attempt to reach out to humanity in centuries, a plea for help against the terrifying onslaught of the Xinthar. But despite its reach, no one knew what the response would be. Had humanity been wiped out? Had their legacy been reduced to myths and legends? On Earth, the United Earth Federation, UEF, watched the transmission with a mixture of disbelief and anxiety. The message had appeared on every comm station, every digital device across the planet. The images of the Concord's council leaders, alien species, their forms strange and otherworldly, flashed on every screen. Their voices were filled with urgency, their plea clear. "We need you. The Xinthar are coming. We don't know if you still exist, but if you do, we need you to help us fight." For many, the very idea that the Concord, the galaxy's ruling elite, would reach out to humanity seemed impossible. Humanity had been reduced to a forgotten relic in the eyes of the galaxy. Earth had isolated itself, its technology stagnating after the war. Their warships, the majestic vessels of a past era, sat in mothballs, their power cores dormant for centuries. The UES military was a shadow of its former glory, its defenses focused solely on protecting the planet and its few remaining colonies. In the face of an alien invasion, many had assumed humanity had been lost to time. The Council's call felt like a ghost from the past, a haunting reminder of a time long gone. Yet as the transmission flickered across Earth's communication networks, there was an undeniable stir of something long buried, something that had refused to die. Deep within the government's most secretive military division, the UES leaders gathered, their faces grim. Admiral Cassian Holt, a decorated veteran of the last great human war, stood at the head of the table, his hand clenched around a communicator. His mind raced. Could they still do it? Could humanity truly rise from the ashes of a war-ravaged past and stand alongside the galactic powers once more? There were those who scoffed at the idea. Earth's fleet was a relic, its once great warships abandoned, mothballed in a forgotten hangar. But Holt's eyes never wavered. Humanity had been down, yes, but it had never been out. And with the Xanthar bearing down on the galaxy, Earth had no choice but to act. "Prepare the fleet," Holt ordered, his voice cold and resolute. "We answer their call." Across Earth, hidden launch facilities, long sealed from the public eye, hummed back to life. It was time to show the galaxy that humanity wasn't just a story. Humanity was a force, and they had only just begun to awaken. The message was clear, now echoed in every corner of the UEF command. Humanity is coming, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy would once again witness the power of mankind. Across the globe, the announcement that humanity was answering the Galactic Concord's call echoed through every channel, every network. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a wave of disbelief, excitement, and fear. Governments and citizens alike struggled to come to terms with the implications of the message. Was Earth truly ready to face the vast, unknown horrors of a galactic war? Could they stand against the Xanthar, a species that had already torn through the galaxy with brutal efficiency? In the depths of Earth's military strongholds, however, the question had already been answered. The United Earth Federation, UEF, had not been idle in the centuries since the war that crippled humanity. Behind the scenes, in remote outposts and hidden bunkers, the UES most brilliant scientists and engineers had been working in secret, reviving humanity's military might. Their fleets had long been dormant, but not forgotten. The warships, once the pride of Earth's fleets, had been meticulously restored, refitted, and upgraded with technologies scavenged from the remnants of old. These ships, sleek and deadly, were powered by experimental engines and weaponry that even the most advanced Concord races could not fully comprehend. Admiral Cassian Holt stood at the head of the operation, overseeing the rapid mobilization. The Admiral's reputation among Earth's military circles was legendary. A survivor of humanity's greatest conflict, his leadership had been forged in the fires of war. His weathered face and sharp eyes revealed little of the internal conflict that had gripped him. Was this truly the right move for Earth? Could they win against a foe as overwhelming as the Xanthar? "Every ship in our fleet will be ready," Holt said, his voice steady. "We won't just show up to answer their call. We'll show them that humanity is a force that cannot be ignored." The first of the human warships, the Vigilance, emerged from its long-hidden hangar, a massive vessel once thought to be little more than a legend. With its gleaming dark hull and an arsenal of advanced weaponry, it was a symbol of what humanity had been and what it could become again. The ship's arrival marked the beginning of the UEF's full-scale mobilization. Across Earth's orbit, dozens more ships, each more powerful than the last, began to awaken from their slumber, prepared for the long journey ahead. As Holt stood at the command center, the enormity of the task before him began to settle in. It wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a battle to reclaim humanity's place in the galaxy. With each passing moment, his resolve strengthened. There would be no hesitation, no retreat. They would fight. They would win. The UES military might, bolstered by the most cutting-edge technologies and innovations humanity had developed in secret, was now a beacon of hope for the galaxy. As the fleet prepared for launch, a unified message was broadcast across the globe. Humanity was coming. Across Earth, people watched as massive fleets gathered in the skies. From the bustling cities to the quietest villages, Humanity stood united, no longer afraid of the unknown. For the first time in centuries, they would take their place among the stars once more. As humanity's fleet made its way across the stars toward the heart of the galactic Concord, the tension in the council chambers was palpable. The Concord's leaders, a diverse mix of alien species, gathered around a massive holographic table, awaiting humanity's arrival. They had expected some form of military response, perhaps a handful of ships, relics of a bygone era, but nothing could have prepared them for the sheer scale of what was to come. When the first human warships appeared on the farthest edges of Concord space, they were little more than blips on the radar. The Concord scouts had been vigilant, expecting any sign of humanity's fleet. But the true weight of what was unfolding only became clear when the first of humanity's ships, the Vigilance, slipped into view. The Vigilance was a monster, a towering beast of metal and energy that dwarfed most ships the Concord had ever seen. Its sleek, obsidian hull reflected the starlight as it glided into the galactic center, the other human vessels trailing behind it in tight formation. The human fleet, once thought to be nothing more than a faint memory, was an armada, a testament to humanity's engineering prowess and military genius. The leaders of the Concord watched in stunned silence. The ships were unlike anything they had ever encountered. Each one was a marvel of design and innovation. Sophisticated, powerful, and terrifying. Their weaponry was so advanced that even the most seasoned Concord tacticians could only speculate on their capabilities. The Vigilance alone boasted energy shields capable of deflecting the deadliest of plasma weapons and cannons that could fire with pinpoint accuracy at distances the Concord had only dreamed of. The other ships in the fleet were no less impressive, each one an apex of technological achievement. Admiral Cassian Holt stood at the helm of the Vigilance, watching as the alien council ships came into view. His face was a mask of quiet determination, though inside, his heart pounded with the weight of what was about to happen. He had spent years in the shadows, preparing for this moment, and now that it was finally here, the enormity of the task ahead seemed almost insurmountable. Humanity was no longer just a myth. They were about to change the course of galactic history. The Concord's leaders exchanged wary glances as Holt's voice crackled across their communications. His tone was firm, but there was a strange calmness in it, one that spoke of humanity's resolve, their unwavering commitment to protect their own, no matter the cost. "You've called us," Holt's voice echoed in their chambers, "and we have answered. But let's be clear, we're here to win this war, not to negotiate. If you want humanity's help, we'll do it on our terms. The Xanthar are a threat to us all, and we will stand with you. But we will lead this fight. You will follow." The Council's representatives, each a veteran of galactic politics and war, could do little but stare in stunned silence. They had expected arrogance, perhaps, but not this level of certainty, this confidence that radiated from Holt and his fleet. For the first time in centuries, the Concord realized that humanity was no longer a relic. They were a force. They had become the unknown factor, the wild card in a game of galactic survival. Admiral Holt's final words rang out, punctuating the moment with chilling finality. "If you think we've forgotten how to fight, you are gravely mistaken. Humanity has always been a warrior. Now we return to the stars, and we will win." The Council had no choice but to accept. They had no other options. As Holt's fleet moved into position, ready to engage the Xanthar and reclaim the galaxy itself stood on the edge of a new era. Humanity, forgotten and dismissed for eons, was back, stronger than ever before. The council chambers of the Galactic Concord were a place where species from every corner of the galaxy met, an ancient round table at its heart, surrounded by representatives of countless civilizations. Yet, as the human fleet entered the center of this vast, intergalactic space, the atmosphere in the room was unlike any the Council had ever felt before. Humanity's sudden re-emergence had thrown the political balance into chaos, leaving many members of the Concord uneasy, uncertain of what this new power would mean for the galaxy. Admiral Cassian Holt stood at the table, flanked by his most trusted officers. The room was silent, the weight of history pressing down on every individual present. Across from Holt, the representatives of the Council's most powerful races, Zeltheri, Nor, and the ancient Yandrians, looked at him with a mix of wariness and grudging respect. The Concord had dealt with humanity before, but never on these terms. Humanity was no longer a partner or adversary. They were something else entirely. They were the unknown. The council leader, a Yandrian named Tiroth, spoke first, her voice calm but tinged with disbelief. "Admiral Holt, your fleet is impressive, but you've brought more than just ships into our space. You've brought an entirely new dynamic to the war against the Xanthar. We've never fought alongside your kind." Holt met her gaze without flinching. His expression remained as stern and focused as ever, his posture exuding the unshakable confidence that had won him the loyalty of his crew. "You didn't need to fight with us. We fought, alone, for centuries. Now you'll fight with us. We've been in your position before. We understand the stakes." Tiroth narrowed her eyes, still unsure. "We've never needed your kind before. Why now?" Holt stepped forward, his voice unwavering. "Because the Xanthar will destroy us all if we don't act. You've seen their power firsthand. Your fleets are already stretched thin across the galaxy, fighting a battle you can't win. The Xanthar are an unstoppable force, until now." The tension in the room thickened as the council members exchanged looks. For the first time in eons, the Galactic Concord was faced with an uncomfortable truth. Humanity, once a distant memory, had the one thing the galaxy now desperately needed: resources, resolve, and a military force willing to go to any lengths to win. Holt continued, his voice growing firm. "We will stand with you, but make no mistake, the terms of this alliance are clear. Humanity leads this war. We know the Xanthar better than anyone. We know how to fight them, how to win against them." The council members hesitated. A few exchanged quiet murmurs in their native tongues, unsure how to respond to Holt's bold declaration. But then, unexpectedly, the leader of the Nor delegation, a grizzled, battle-worn being named Sok, broke the silence. "The Admiral is right," Sok said, his voice rough but sincere. "Our fleets are barely holding together against the Xanthar. If humanity can bring what they've promised, we'll follow your lead." The tension began to break as the other members of the council shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The reality was undeniable. Humanity had returned, and their potential was too great to ignore. There was no choice now but to accept their help, no matter how unconventional the term seemed. Tiroth leaned forward, her voice no longer filled with suspicion, but rather an understanding that came from the gravitas of the moment. "Very well, Admiral. We will stand with you. Humanity leads the charge." Holt nodded, his eyes scanning the room of galactic leaders. "Together, we will defeat the Xanthar. This is our fight, but we fight for all of us." As the Council's leaders formally acknowledged humanity's leadership, the tension shifted to a new phase. The war against the Xanthar was no longer just a struggle for survival. It was a battle for the future of the galaxy, and humanity, once forgotten, was now at the forefront. The alliances forged in this moment would be tested in the fires of war, but one thing was certain: humanity had claimed its place in the galaxy once more. The galaxy had never faced a threat like the Xanthar. Their war machines were ferocious, their tactics brutal. They tore through star systems with an efficiency that sent shivers down the spines of even the most hardened commanders. But for the first time in centuries, the Galactic Concord wasn't facing the Xanthar alone. Humanity, an unanticipated and formidable ally, had brought with them an entirely new set of strategies, technologies, and an unwavering resolve. In the days that followed the formal alliance, the war preparations intensified. Across the galaxy, fleet commanders and military strategists worked around the clock, pooling their knowledge and resources. The UEF's fleet, having been reconstructed from the ground up, was unlike anything the Concorde had ever seen. Every human ship was a fortress of cutting-edge technology, built for speed, stealth, and destruction. And every human soldier, every officer, was prepared to fight a war they had long anticipated, but never thought they'd be called to wage again. Admiral Holt had made it clear from the start. This wasn't going to be a traditional campaign. Humanity wasn't here to fit in with the Concorde's way of warfare. They were here to change the rules of the game. Holt was adamant that humanity's experience with the Xanthar, gained from decades of isolated conflict, gave them a unique edge. The Concorde had underestimated the Xanthar before, and humanity wasn't about to repeat that mistake. The first joint operation between the two sides was set to take place in the Outer Rim, where the Xanthar had begun to encroach on Concorde territories. The plan was simple: draw the Xanthar into a trap, using a decoy fleet of Concorde ships, and then unleash the full might of humanity's warships to hit them when they were most vulnerable. As the operation drew closer, tensions ran high. There were still those within the Concorde who doubted humanity's ability to truly make a difference. Some species, particularly the Xelthari, viewed humans with suspicion and even disdain. They questioned humanity's motives, its capacity for cooperation, and whether this rebirth of humanity was simply an attempt to expand their own influence. But Holt, for all his experience and leadership, could feel the weight of the mistrust in the air. The Concorde was a delicate web of species, each with their own agendas, and humanity was the newest and most unpredictable player in that web. The risk of failure was enormous. If this first operation failed, the entire galaxy might question whether humanity's intervention had been a mistake. "I don't care what they think," Holt said as he stood in the command center of the Vigilance, the massive warship that had become the symbol of humanity's resurgence. His officers, human and Concorde alike, were gathered around him, eyes fixed on the holographic maps before them. "We don't fight for their approval," he continued. "We fight because this is our war too. If they want to follow, they'd follow. If not, we'll lead them anyway." A young officer beside him, Lieutenant Lena Graves, spoke up. "Sir, the Xanthar fleet is closing in. They're in position." Holt gave a single nod, his eyes narrowing as the holographic display showed the position of the Xanthar forces. An immense fleet that could obliterate entire planets in a matter of hours. Humanity's ships, sleek and deadly, were still far outnumbered, but Holt wasn't worried about numbers. The Xanthar were too predictable, too brash. That was their weakness, and humanity had learned to exploit weaknesses. "Launch the decoy fleet," Holt commanded, his voice calm but heavy with authority. "And make sure our fleet stays hidden until the perfect moment. We hit them fast and hard, before they even know we're there." As the decoy fleet moved into position, the tension was nearly unbearable. The Concorde ships, still wary of human tactics, had been reluctant to place themselves in harm's way. But the moment they crossed into the Xanthar's territory, the trap was set. The Xanthar, hungry for battle, followed the decoy fleet into the ambush zone. That's when humanity struck. The Vigilance and the rest of the fleet emerged from stealth, a thunderous barrage of plasma cannons and railgun fire erupting from their hulls. The Xanthar were taken completely by surprise. Their ships, ill-prepared for such a precise and aggressive strike, scattered in confusion. The human fleet moved with ruthless efficiency, their ships dancing around the larger Xanthar vessels, dodging fire and landing devastating blows. Admiral Holt's voice rang out across the comms. "This is how we fight. This is how we win." The Xanthar, though powerful, were not prepared for this new type of warfare. Their brute force tactics faltered against the well-coordinated, adaptive strategy of humanity's fleet. It was clear. This battle was only the beginning. But humanity's message had been sent, loud and clear. They were no longer the forgotten species. They were a force to be reckoned with. The battle for the Outer Rim had been a stunning success. The Xanthar, taken by surprise by humanity's coordinated assault, had suffered significant losses. The once invincible enemy fleet had been shattered, their forces in disarray. In the wake of the operation, humanity's ships, though battered, remained standing strong. The Galactic Concord, for the first time, saw what humanity had promised: precision, ferocity, and a relentless drive to win. Admiral Cassian Holt stood at the center of the Vigilance's command bridge, his eyes scanning the reports streaming in from all sectors. The damage had been considerable, but the human fleet had executed its plan flawlessly. The Xinthar's response had been swift, but it was clear that they hadn't fully understood the power that humanity could wield. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. "Status report," Holt ordered, his voice steady, betraying none of the fatigue that weighed on his shoulders. Lieutenant Graves, standing beside him, looked over the data. "We've crippled nearly 30% of the Xinthar fleet, sir. Their command ship was heavily damaged, but they're retreating into the asteroid belt. We've forced them to retreat for now, but they'll regroup. We've only won a battle, not the war." Holt nodded, his expression hardening. "We've bought time, but we need to push them back, not just slow them down. They'll be back, stronger than before. This won't be the last time they test us." Despite his words, a sense of quiet pride lingered in the air. Humanity had done something the Galactic Concord couldn't. They had decisively struck back against the Xinthar. The Concord races, many of whom had grown complacent over the centuries of relative peace, were now forced to see humanity for what it was: formidable, resourceful, and capable of challenging the mightiest of foes. Across the galaxy, news of the victory spread like wildfire. The people of the Concord worlds, who had lived under the shadow of the Xinthar threat for so long, began to hope again. The once distant human presence had become the galaxy's spark of defiance. Ships of all sizes, from the massive warships of the Xelthari to the nimble scout vessels of the Nor, began to rally around the human fleet. The alliance was beginning to feel less like an uneasy coalition and more like a united force, ready to take on the Xinthar together. But there was no celebration, no time for rest. The Xinthar were relentless, and Holt knew that this victory, while monumental, had made them more dangerous. The enemy would learn from their mistakes, adapt, and return with an even fiercer resolve. "We need to keep the pressure on them," Holt said, turning to his senior officers. "We can't afford to give them time to regroup." Graves spoke up, her voice filled with urgency. "We've already mapped several Xinthar strongholds within their territory. If we move fast, we could strike another blow before they have time to reinforce." Holt considered her suggestion for a moment, then nodded. "Prepare the fleet. We strike at dawn." As the fleet readied for another offensive, the commanders of the Galactic Concord gathered in an emergency meeting. The Nor, the Xelthari, and even the Yandrians, who had initially been cautious about humanity's presence, were now willing to work with humanity, fully recognizing the stakes of the war. The distrust was still there, but it was being replaced by a growing sense of unity. The galaxy's disparate factions, once focused on their own survival, were now beginning to see the greater threat. The Xinthar were no longer just an external enemy, but a force that threatened the very fabric of the galaxy's existence. At the council table, Taroth, the Yandrian leader, looked across the room at Admiral Holt. "You have proven your worth, Admiral. You've shown us what we could not do alone. The Concord stands with humanity." Holt met her gaze, his face stoic, but a hint of acknowledgement passed between them. The alliance was no longer just a matter of necessity. It was becoming something more, something powerful. "We stand together," Holt replied, "and we fight for the galaxy's future." As the fleet prepared to launch its next offensive, the weight of the war ahead loomed larger than ever. The Xinthar would be relentless, but now humanity and the Concord stood united, and for the first time in years, there was a sense that the tide of the war was beginning to turn in their favor. The time for skirmishes and tactical strikes was over. The Xinthar, wounded but far from broken, had regrouped and rallied their full forces. Their immense fleet was closing in on the heart of the Galactic Concord, poised to wipe out the remaining resistance and secure total domination. The fate of the galaxy now hung in the balance, and the alliance between humanity and the Galactic Concord would be tested like never before. Admiral Holt stood before a massive holographic display, watching as the Xinthar fleet advanced toward the Concord capital world, Icarus. The planet's surface glowed with the light of distant stars, a beacon of life that now seemed dangerously close to extinction. Holt's eyes narrowed. This was the final stand. If they failed, it wouldn't just be the end of the Concord. It would be the end of the galaxy's fight for freedom. "This is it," Holt said, his voice steady, though he felt the gravity of the moment weighing heavily on him. "We hit them hard. We hit them fast. We won't give them a chance to regroup again." Lieutenant Graves, standing at his side, looked up at him with determination. "We've built the perfect trap. Their fleet is massive, but it's overextended. If we can strike quickly and decisively, we can break their command structure and scatter them." The human fleet, though smaller than the Xinthars, had proven time and again that they could outmaneuver their enemies. Every ship in Holt's armada had been refitted with new weaponry and technology from the Concord's best minds. Their strategies were flexible, dynamic, and brutal. The unity of the combined fleet of humanity and the Concord races had been forged in the fires of their previous battles, and now it was time to deliver the final blow. Across the galaxy, millions of soldiers, human and alien alike, prepared for the coming battle. On the ground, in space, and in the hearts of every warrior, there was a common purpose: to protect their worlds, their families, and the future of the galaxy itself. They had learned to fight side by side, and now it was clear this wasn't just a war of survival. It was a war of identity, of defiance, and of unity. The Galactic Concord, once fractured and uncertain, had become a cohesive, powerful force. The Nor, with their agile scout ships, would strike from the shadows. The Xelthari, with their monstrous dreadnoughts, would form the vanguard, pounding the Xinthar with devastating firepower. And humanity would be the spearhead, striking directly at the heart of the Xinthar's command fleet. The battle began as the human fleet emerged from the shadows, their ships darting across space like predators stalking their prey. The Xinthar, overconfident in their size and strength, were caught off guard. Humanity's precision strikes crippled their front lines, creating an opening for the Concord to flood into their defenses. Holt watched as his fleet danced through the chaos, each ship moving with deadly purpose, cutting down Xinthar ships with brutal efficiency. But the Xinthar were relentless. The larger ships in their fleet launched waves of counterattacks, sending torrents of plasma and energy blasts crashing into the human ships. For every Xinthar ship that fell, two more seemed to take its place. The toll was heavy, but humanity pressed on, refusing to yield. Holt's voice came over the comms, cutting through the noise of the battle. "Focus fire on their command ships. We break them. We break their will." The human fleet pivoted, focusing all their firepower on the Xinthar flagship. The Vigilance and its allies tore through the Xinthar's defenses, targeting weak points in their ships and cutting off their reinforcements. Slowly, the Xinthar command fleet began to crumble. But just as victory seemed within reach, the Xinthar revealed their trump card: a massive, heavily armored warship hidden in the depths of their fleet. It was unlike anything the Galactic Concord had ever seen. An enormous dreadnought, bristling with weapons, capable of devastating entire fleets with a single strike. "This is it," Holt said, his voice tight with urgency. "Everyone, focus all fire on that dreadnought. If we don't destroy it, we lose everything." The battle reached a fever pitch as the combined fleets of humanity and the Concord launched their final assault on the Xinthar dreadnought. The human ships, already battered and scarred from the battle, poured everything they had into the massive vessel. Plasma fire, railgun rounds, and missile barrages lit up the void as they hammered the Xinthar ship's shields. It was a brutal, unrelenting push. The dreadnought held for a while, But as the human fleet's fire intensified, its shields began to falter. Holt watched, his eyes locked on the unfolding destruction, as the dreadnought's core started to destabilize. With one final, combined strike from the Vigilance and its allies, the dreadnought exploded in a cataclysmic burst of light, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The Xinthar fleet, now without its command structure and their most powerful weapon, faltered. Chaos spread through their ranks, and one by one, their ships began to retreat. The human fleet and their allies pressed on, breaking the Xinthar's resolve once and for all. As the last of the Xinthar forces scattered into the dark void of space, Holt stood tall. The galaxy had survived. Humanity had proven itself, not just as a force capable of surviving, but as a force capable of leading and winning against overwhelming odds. The war was over. The Xinthar were defeated. And for the first time in eons, the galaxy was at peace.